T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is an antique, what I call it, pocket door lock. So this is the hook that would be attached to either the frame or a secondary pocket door. And this would be the part that would wrap around the end, be mortised in, and used to lock the door. It has a key cylinder on this side. This side it has a thumb turn. This is the hook. The hook slides into this location here when it's closed. When you close the door, it pushes that inward, and then you can lock the door. So, just had a power failure. So, it's not operating right. This is the little pull on there, but I'm going to take it apart, disassemble it, and see what's going on and see if I can get it to work right. I think their issue might be that this isn't lining up properly and it's not pushing that in far enough to allow it to lock. When it's pushed in far enough, it can be locked into place. Or it should be able to lock into place. There we go. Again, it should lock into place. This is why they brought it to me. There, that's finally locked. Unlocked. Okay, we're going to disassemble it and figure out what's going on. So, there should be a couple of machine screws, I believe, that go in here. From the looks of it, they haven't had the right screws for a while. There's damage here from prying on it. I'll see if I can straighten that out for them before I'm done. There's damage on here from putting pliers on it, probably because it was jamming on them. This is all loose. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but these screws are loose. This whole thing is just worn out here. So we'll clean this up and properly lubricate that, tighten everything up properly. Let's set that aside. Looking at it here, we can tell that somebody has worked on it before, and more than likely these are the wrong screws. We got a pan head at the top and a round head at the bottom. There probably should be a pan head or even a flat head screw that should be in there. Here's a flat head screw here that looks bent, and I believe it is, it probably is a machine screw used to hold this lock body to this faceplate. So I think we got to take these two screws out and see what's on the other side of that, and go from there. Well, it's a machine screw. That's good. All right. So now we can separate the outer part. You can see there's a lot of wear on there. The set screw there that holds the cylinder in. This part rotates. This is the part that is attached, or that these pegs set in to lock or unlock it. And they rotate up against this part here, which should be spring loaded, and I don't see a spring in there. So that could be part of our issue. This one here is spring loaded. This one here, if I were to guess, there's probably supposed to be a little spring back here. Yeah, there's a pocket for it. So that spring's missing. We'll have to come up with a spring for that. There's a spring in here. And let's go ahead and finish taking the cover off on this side. Another screw there. And I would suspect that there's a bunch of spring-loaded parts in here. I've never had this particular model of part, so this is all new to me also. So this part, this is your pull handle. That's your slide. That's the part that locks here. This is the part that pushed in I was showing you earlier. There's one of the springs that goes in there, lines up with these marks here. There's a spring underneath here for this to make it fall back into place. There's a spring for that. Let's go ahead and take these two springs out. Go get my shrum tool. Don't want to lose those. So the rest of this is just filthy. We'll clean this up and figure out the rest of this. Let's set that aside. What else we got on here we can disassemble easily? This piece here doesn't seem right. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here with that. Does not come up. I don't know. I suspect there's supposed to be a spring on there somewhere that holds tension on here, or actually on the bottom of this. So I'll examine that a little closer and see if I can figure out why that's not working properly. Actually, I decided let's take this cylinder out of here so we can service it also. A little set screw on the side, we take that loose, and it was loose. And some of these screw in, some of them don't. This one looks like it screws in. So we're going to unscrew it. Actually, it doesn't. It just looks like it floats in, so it ought to come out. No, it's unscrewing. So we're going to use the operating key and not push it in all the way and just use it like a screwdriver. That part, and the cylinder. Somebody at one point painted over the cylinder, and that's too bad. This is looks like it might have been really nice colored bronze, might have been what they called japanned. I can't tell. I would say it was probably a brass with a darkening color to it. I cannot think of the term. But there's actually damage to it here. Somebody has pried on it, probably trying to figure out how to get it apart, and not knowing that you had to take this part out. So this has an issue, at least with that key. So we'll rekey that and make that work properly before we put that back together. I'll probably go ahead and finish taking the silver paint off of here. I don't think I'll take it off the other part. And we'll go from there. Again, I'll show you this when we get this all cleaned up. So I found there was a little spring retainer right here along this edge. Allows that to come apart. Now I can properly clean this and put her back together. While cleaning this, I noticed there's a lot of extra material on here from the forging process that probably doesn't affect anything. But I'm going to go ahead and take it off with a file here and clean it all up. Nobody will probably ever see this unless it's the next service tech that tears this apart 50 to 100 years from now. Alright, got them, all those casting marks cleaned up. Whether it'll affect the operation, probably not, but looks better. So while cleaning this up, I found that somebody has cracked it. You can see the crack right here. And that crack, here's my screwdriver here. That crack starts there and goes all the way around to about here. You can see that dark line right there. It might not be so easy. You can see this dark line. It goes all the way to there. And on this side, you can see where that dark line goes all the way around to there. That's cracked. That was caused by somebody trying to pry on the door or the lock parts to try to get this open. If you remember, there was damage to the faceplate. I've done a little work on it and straightened it all out here, but there's still damage here that I just couldn't get rid of without doing major work to it. So that was caused by somebody. You see my machining parts, tapping points here. That's caused by somebody who was trying to pry the cylinder out because they couldn't figure out how to get it out, so they just thought they'd work on it with a screwdriver or a pry bar. So I guess in the process they put a little too much, there we go, too much pry on it, and the issue is this is cracked. So this has to be installed, or it was installed with that part up, and that's what locked in the that's what unlocked or locked it. I think I'm going to install that down so that we keep all the stress, or take all the stress off of this broken part and leave it up here on the part that's not broken. The only issue with that is that in the future when somebody needs to remove the cylinder, they're going to have an issue. So I may go ahead and drill and tap this side and put the set screw on this side. Set screws here. I'll just drill and tap, put the set screw over here, and that issue will be covered also. So fixing that part. There you go. tell you the truth, thought I lost a screw. So while I'm cleaning this, I went ahead and took the casting marks off of this area here. And the reason I did that is because that's the area that's going to be used to lock and unlock. And I didn't want those extra pieces of casting to be there and cause issues. So go ahead and take them off. And now I'm going to finish cleaning this up, and we're going to start reassembly here in just a second. So we're going to use Aeroshell 22 grease. This is some of the slickest grease made, and we don't put very much on. We put just a little bit on. We don't want dirt getting attracted to the parts. So if you can see the grease, it's probably too much. So that's the way we're going to treat this. There were indications of a white lithium grease having been put into this at sometime in the past, and it had hardened up. So we're going to use this stuff. Most of the time I've ever seen this, years later, it's still working great unless it's just worn out, or if it's in an exterior environment where it's getting a lot of weather. Inside locations, this stuff works great for years and years and years. So it was designed for the aerospace industry, and it is quite often used throughout the safe and vault industry. So that's what we're going to use on this lock today. And we're going to start reassembly. All right, so I'm going to start with a good clean rag. A bit of this Aeroshell on my finger here. Aeroshell 22, and I'm just going to lubricate this area. And this is the area that grinds against the inside and cover of this part. And we're going to add all this grease, and then we're going to clean it so all that extra grease is away. We don't want to see hardly any of that grease left over. The interesting thing about this is any extra grease should just squeeze out of the way. Okay, there we go. That comes up through the bottom here. This piece sits here, and it'll be rubbing on the top and bottom here occasionally. So we're going to add some grease to those positions. We don't want to put any here because it's unnecessary, not needed. And reaffix the screws. See if I can do this without getting in the way of the camera too much. Get the screw on there. An old trick taught to me by my locksmith mentor. Back that screw up until it clicks. Well, that works in most cases. When it clicks, you've lined up the threads between the screw and the material you're screwing into. Seems to be adjusted fairly decently. Seems to rotate fairly decently. Before we do final assembly, we'll put a little bit of grease on these studs. And off camera, I reassembled this. There's a little spring wire underneath here. These two parts go together. This is the part where I re-drilled and tapped for the 832 set screw. And we're going to start reassembling this as soon as I find a spring for this. So that's my next quest. So I save springs out of old locks, and this spring, and I'm sure it came out of an Adams Wright Mortise lock, looks to be perfect for this. So we'll do a little grease on the post that it rotates on. Not a lot, again, we don't want dirt accumulation. We'll put some grease on the tip of that spring. That helps hold it in there while we do this. I'm going to push that spring down as we insert this. Kind of center it up in there. Well, that's working great. That's what's been missing from this lock for a while now. And this part goes in here. And it is what gets pressed down. Hard to see, I know. It gets pressed down by the strike, which is a hook strike. And this slide comes up to hook the hook. So let's put this back together here, make sure it's working good. I'm going to start with the slide, which should be this way up. Like so. It goes up and down. There are two springs that go underneath this. We're going to take care of those right now, and then we're going to grease this as we go. So those two springs push on this area right here. And this one's got some of the casting left on it, and there's some casting over here. Both of those I'm going to take off. I think that they originally were there left them there trying to help with the springs, but they're all bent up. Well, maybe I can bend them down and get them to work again. So that's what we'll do. Those go like that, like that. You flip the whole thing over, and they go into these slots. So let's see if we can make that work. First, this part has to go in. And we're going to lubricate it along the edges here where it slides in. We don't need a lot. Put a little bit where the spring goes in. And we're going to put a little bit on the tip of the spring down here too. And drop that in there. Okay, so from here on out, we're going to have issues with holding this while I work on it. You see how it wants to flop over. So I'm going to grab a pair of pliers that I can hook on there to keep that from flopping. So those pliers are barely grabbing hold of that, but they're keeping this from flopping around on me while I reassemble this. That piece has to slide up and down like that. And it was actually turned over and went this way. And we'll put it back that way so that the wear marks are in the same spot. I'm going to lubricate every place I think that this is going to rub. Again, we don't need a lot. Oh, now I see. This little two studs, they line up with this piece underneath here. Yeah. I understand now. I was trying to figure out how that was going to work, and I figured it out. Okay, I got a lot of parts to put back together here, and I'm going to work on this and try to do it while I let the video run. I probably won't talk. I might cuss a little bit. But we got to get this all back together. It needs more hands than I have available, so there we go. We're just gonna do it. We're going to attach these springs after we get this piece underneath here. I'll kind of lay that like that. The shrum tool is going to be my friend, I can tell. Okay, that piece underneath has to line up properly. We didn't get that in the right, there we go, got to get that in the right spot. Let's see if we can get this to slide properly. I think we're down in there, yeah. Okay, we've got kind of a jam going on. I got to figure out why. Oh, silly. That's got to go down. Then that can go up. There we go. That piece has to go down before this hook part can go up. If I let go of that, we're going to have things flying everywhere. So now I'm going to grab the cover. Slide that back on. Hold that in place. Now, so let's go ahead and take the vice grips off. And I've got two screws that have to go back in, one here and one on the other side. And let's see if I can do those while talking on camera, or if I'm going to have to put this thing aside. I got grease all over that. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to stop there, not completely tighten it, and put this one down. I think I just made a mistake. Nope, we're good. Okay, that's the main unit. And it's in a bind right here. This piece has a tendency to float. So I'm probably, and we knew this bracket was bent. And that's where our issue is now. I think we're gonna try to open this hole up a little bit, make that work a little smoother. It's actually rusted through there, and I think the corrosion is what's putting it in a bind. This part is working. Yeah, seems to be working great. Okay, so we're going to take this back apart, clean out that faceplate, make it work better. So there's a bend in there because as soon as I released the pressure on those screws, it started feeling a lot better. And as I look, I can see where the strike has been hitting right here. So that's actually bent that piece. I'm still going to go ahead and clean this out right here. And I'm hoping I can do this without losing all these parts. So I'm going to let this sit here. Yeah, everything wants to fly apart right now. I also think these screws, if they go in too far, we'll put that in a bind. So we may have to adjust those screws. They may not be the correct screw. They may come from some other place on this lock. So let's see if we can keep everything from flying apart. Put my vice grip holder back on it so it doesn't walk away. Then we're going to clean this area out and we're going to straighten that spot out. It's bent from the right here, and that's from that strike hitting it and bending it. So there's an alignment issue on the doors I'll have to talk to the customer about. So let's get that cleaned up and we'll go on from there. Alright, we got the shop heater running in the background there. Let's see if we can reassemble this properly. So I think that's actually bent. Oh. Nope, it's come out of its slot. That's what's going on. Okay. Gotta get it back where it belongs before we can continue this. That's where it belongs, right there. Okay. That's locked in, that's locked in. Let's put this back. There's a guy on the internet. Builds these gorgeous decks. I think he's in New Jersey. But his favorite term is locked in for justice. It's kind of neat. He always slows the video down. Locked in for justice. So we got one side in. We'll put the other side in. We're going to examine the slide in there, and that screw fell on the floor. Trying to get away. So we're in central Illinois right now. The weather has been awful for the last few days. And when I say awful, I'm not talking about snowing or raining or anything like that. It's been cold and windy. And my thumbs hurt. See the splits? Yay. And don't start blowing up my comments with stuff for me to use at stop set. I know there's all kinds of stuff out there. So, all right. Everything seems to be working well. So that should automatically spring up as soon as the door closes. Just like that. To open it, you turn this piece over here and it pushes that down and that opens it. This acts as a kind of a stop, a rest, a detent would be the best word for it. So when this strike, when that strike pushes into that, pushes that down, automatically locks. If you're on the outside, you'll need the key. If you're on the inside, you'll need this piece. So we're going to go ahead and reassemble the rest of this. So we're going to set that piece aside. We're going to get our cylinder back out, and our cylinder screws into this piece. Now remember, I had to replace this or move this to this side because I want my heavy part at the top. And that's what hits this detent. So in the locked position, that sits like that. In the unlocked position, that sits like that. Locked, unlocked. So in the unlocked position, if I push down on this, that piece doesn't come up. So if I set it for locked, it'll lock up as long as the strike lines up properly. So there we go. That is our, what we have to do right now is finish this up by attaching all these pieces and putting it in place. So I've already put this one in off camera. This one has a bend to it, so I'm going to straighten it out. And that explains an issue I was having earlier, what was going on. That's bent because somebody else worked on it in the past. So I need to correct that bend to make that sit flat. So I'm going to do that off camera. So I got this flattened out, and it attaches like that. We're going to slide this out of our way. It has to be pressed down in there. And to do that, I'm going to set it on the edge of my bench and tap it with a hammer. Okay. Now I'm going to take my spring-loaded center punch, just give it a couple of spots there to lock those in. Again, lock them in for justice, like that one guy says. I just figured out the name of that channel. It's called Premier Outdoor Living. Interesting characters on there. They do what appears to be gorgeous work. So I don't want this coming apart when somebody takes that apart. So I'm going to make sure these are kind of bent over where they need to be. It's like a mushrooming effect. So those don't come apart easy. All right, so we should have this thing working correctly now. I had originally said I was going to clean this up, but I don't don't think I will. I'll leave that alone. That's the customer's job. This has been repainted. I don't know why, but it at one time was probably a gorgeous looking piece of brass. From what I can tell, these parts were actually spray painted with a colored lacquer, and probably looked gorgeous at one time. So we're going to put this in there. We know that when it's all said and done, that's up, just like that. And I know that I want this part up. I believe that's the part that's detinning. Although let's just see here. Where do I think the most strain is at? The bottom or the top? I really think that with the most strain. Is at the top. So that's the way we're going to put it on. The way I figured here. That goes in like that. Actually goes in like this. Got to start turning it correctly. We want this part up. Pretty sure I had about 3 threads exposed. I really believe that that part was screwed in too far previously, which makes me think somebody was messing with it. So I'm going to set that right like that for just a minute. That goes like this, up. Yes. So my set screw is exposed right there. I'm going to screw that in. And that should be down in that slot that's going through there. There's a lot of space in there. Probably should be about right there, and there's probably a spacer ring missing from underneath there. I'm going to go ahead and turn it in another full turn. Set our spacer ring, or set our screw. That looks good. Let's put this together here. Okay, so here that looks good. I still think I need to adjust this here, the spacer ring underneath. So I'll find a spacer ring for it. I'll find one in a dark bronze. Then we'll come back and reset this. So hang on. So I found a bronze spacer ring that came off something else that I just thrown in the scrap bin, and that's what we're going to use to correct this. And as you've seen most of this before, the screw. This shouldn't take too long, but I'm going to do it off camera. So I've attached a new spacer ring. It's underneath there like that. And I think I've got this figured out. That spacing looks perfect. So I'm going to go find some screws to attach these. Again, they need to be a panhead screw, a very flat panhead screw. These seem a little bit on the long side, but that's what I'm going to look for. These are an 832. That's a round head. That's what also came out of there. And that's just too high a head. I need a very shallow head on there. So I'm going to go find one. Be right back. Okay, I found some 832 screws. For some reason, I don't have a Phillips screwdriver handy. And let's put them on there and see if this is holding it together the way we want. There. Alright, so we got flexibility in there. When you put this in here and that mounts into the wood, that takes up all that extra there. And then you mount this into the wood and all that flex goes away. So these slide here until you're ready for it. We could put washers underneath them, and they had some bigger headed screws on there, but let's leave it like that for now. We're going to put some Arrow Shell 22 on these studs. We're going to drop them into our holes. And if we did everything right, this thing should work properly. That should be locked. Or is that unlocked? That's locked. Okay. Turn the knob back. And it unlocks. Let's see if we can do that so we have some light on it. That's locked. Doesn't want to go up. Push that. Locks. So that's pushed by the strike. If the strike was there, that's how that should work. So turn it back to unlock it. Now let's put the strike in there and press down on it like we would if the door was closing. There's an issue. There it tried to lock. So I think the strike has been the issue for a while here. The head of that has been ground off, so there's not enough to allow it to push us down far enough. Oh, no, we still got it in the unlock position. It'll never work like that. So there it goes. And that's grabbed. That's what we want. That won't release until we use the key or turn the thumb turn and release it that way. So this part would be attached to the secondary door or to the frame, depending on if the pocket door is a double pocket door or a single pocket door. This looks to be a single pocket door. So this would attach to the frame where the door slides up against. That's in a locked position, but not locked until it closes against that. There you go. That's locked her in. We're going to put the key in, and we'll turn it. There you go. Released it. We've got this fixed. So, there you have it. Pocket door lock repaired. I think the customer's going to be happy. I am disappointed that there's paint on it, but I think the customer's going to be happy. And I forgot to tell you about this knob. This was chewed up. Somebody had been putting a pair of pliers on it, probably trying to figure out how it works, and scarred it all up. And I really thought that was not good. This is a piece of cast metal that needed a lot of cleaning to get all those pinch marks out from pliers. I don't have a pair handy, but pliers will have, these are flat, have grooves or cross hatches on them to make gripping easier. And when you use pliers in such a manner, here we go, you can see these grooves. Those grooves grab a hold of that and you twist and it scars. So that's what's happened in the past. I took all that scar material out, but I didn't take everything out. I just cleaned it up. Somebody grabs a hold of that, it wasn't going to cut their finger. So if it was me, and if this was my house, I'd take and completely clean that up, get rid of all those scar marks. And unfortunately, I do not have a paint gun that can properly paint this. I would clean this all up and put this back to original color, which included a lacquer color, and the lacquer would have been colored like a dark gold or brownish color, as you can see down in here. That's lacquered in there. That's a colored lacquer that they filled that with. Actually, that's colored lacquer over the bronze piece that's in there. So that's how this would originally been done. That's how this would have originally been done. Might have been over the top of this bronze also, but that would probably have been done a little differently. I wish I had a catalog of something that I could show everybody, but there you have it. This one's done.